Emil, we recently had this quiz, and the entire chess world got to see your chess knowledge about different subjects, about chess history. And so we thought that maybe it's a good idea for you to talk about a subject which would enhance the knowledge of people about someone in chess.
Well, thanks, Agar. Yeah, I didn't expect actually that it will continue this way. I mean, talking about chess history, of course, I'm very fond of it, and I read a lot of books and made even some research and met people who knew these people. I mean, I probably was having a unique chance to talk to legends of past. I played, of course, with Mislav and Korchnoi, but also I met people who were older than them, and I spoke to them. The person the two people who I knew who would be the oldest, or even three. One was Miguel Neider. I actually happened to win the last tournament organized by himself in Buenos Aires in 1997.
Wow.
Yes, and actually it was played in a nice theater, and by that time I was world junior champion, and it was very special, I would say, visit to Argentina, and I remember it vividly. Still 26 years past, and he of course told many stories, and he knew them. I also knew Steinitz, who was Lithuanian #2 and played in Olympiad for Lithuania, and he was then later moved to Israel and was a unique character. He spoke fluently 7 or 8 languages, fluently, not just like many of us speak a few words and considers himself a speaker. And he knew countless stories. I happened to play against Shlomo Smiltener, who was the oldest, by that time oldest living master in Israel. He lived up to 90 years old, and he was like 86 when I played with him. And the amazing story about the guy is that he played against Jacques Mises, famous maestro Jacques Mises, who was born in 1865. 1865, just think about it.
So you were connected to Mises through this person.
Yes, Milton. And of course, a lot of knowledge and a lot of hidden things which sometimes don't go to book. I learned from Yakov Neistat. I can call him a friend. We've been very close for several years.
He's written some very nice books.
He written fantastic books. He is known for his opening books and chess puzzle books. Actually, chess puzzle books is one of the best chess puzzle books. I really wholeheartedly recommend it. I learned by myself on his books, but also more than that, he was chess historian, and he wrote books about chess history. About one of his first works was on Steinitz. Then came the chess world before Steinitz, and he continued with Lasker. So he knew in person all the Soviet world champions, because he was born in 1923, and unfortunately he died early this year, just a few months before he's 100 years old. But he was a very bright person, and I would say that we only started communicating when he was 91 or 92, and he was as sharp as we're here, absolutely sharp. Only in the last couple of years, after the coronavirus, actually, when he sat at home, and it was already difficult for him. But prior to 95, 96, he was absolutely sharp, memory, jokes, everything. So yeah, I got this privilege, and I feel that I have to share it with the general chess community, because this knowledge, this understanding of chess world fades. Almost nobody reads books today.
Yes.
And it's a pity. I'm writing some essays from time to time on my Facebook.
Yes, I read them, and there is so much of knowledge about different people that you share.
Yeah, I try to be more focused on a wider perception rather than which openings Geller played and so on. but also I share some why this or that person was important, his role in chess. And I feel that many chess lovers miss this let's say, content, like as I
Right.
do it, because very few people create it. I mean, of course, nothing wrong with creating this hype content which is being created and generated time after time. All the stream splits and fun. But also chess, what is so special about chess that we have such a heritage.
Yes.
That's immense heritage that cannot be compared probably with any other sport.
Yeah.
Because all our games are stored. You can sit down and replay Morphy games, and you can learn things. You can open the books which were written in the 19th century and were, let's say, influencing the chess theory and how it's continued. So it's a lot of interesting research, but unfortunately, let's say the way to access to newer generation is very limited. You don't have any chess history channel or something,
Right.
and you have very few means to get to this knowledge. And also sometimes, not everything you can describe in a book. Book is after all 320 pages, and you have thousands and thousands of stories and recollections, and so that's why I think it's good. I'll be continuing sharing more and more bits in my Facebook, because the format allows for it. Fortunately, unfortunately, I have less time for it in my role in FIDE, because if all I bring to players who want to participate in professional world championship a collection of my recollections, that would not be sufficient. I also need to bring few millions for the prize fund. But of course, I see chess history and popularizing it as a part of my vocation, I would say. It's not my work. It's not even not my hobby. It's just because I feel that there is an interest for that, and I can do something that very few people could do and would do otherwise.
No, I've been a journalist for like over almost a decade now, and I can say that one of the reasons why chess history stuff doesn't exist is because there are not many people who know so much about history. So in that sense, you are unique. And so today, a topic that you would like to speak about, because you can speak on any subject. What would be your choice?
No, I don't think I'm unique. There are many people, there are professional chess historians who would know more than me. Maybe they would have less understanding of an impact of player for future chess development, right? But as historians, they would know. I'm not a professional historian. Let me stress it, and that's very important. And I would not be able to write a book as let's say profoundly scientifically. But yes, to connect it between past and present, to evaluate the role of a player. I didn't know where to start, honestly, because maybe we should start with Paul Morphy, who was the person who was the last from the chess, pre-modern chess, before Steinitz, and who is admired by many and who was unbeaten, as you know.
I can tell you what I know about him, and then you can say. I think Morphy was the first unofficial world champion, as they say. That's what I kind of feel. And also his playing style was ahead of his time. He was very aggressive, very active. And I saw many of his sacrificial games. And he passed away at a very young age. So this is kind of the knowledge I have about Paul Morphy, which is not too much.
Not too much, and half of it wrong.
Half of it wrong.
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's an important point.
Okay.
You see, and you are in chess for 20 years, and you are a strong player, and you are a journalist. So let's start with Paul Morphy then. Okay, first of all, he didn't pass away early. He just basically stopped playing chess very quickly. He lived by that standards. He was born in 1837, and he died in 1884. So by that standards, 47 years, that was normal, more or less. What happened actually when you say that he was ahead of his time? No, he was not. He was ahead of his opponents by the big margin. He did not actually bring into chess something that later Steinitz brought, and before or together with Steinitz, Louis Paulson as well. Morphy was probably the last representative of the open chess. What he was absolutely great in, he had a great feel for dynamism. He was a very dynamic player. He, even if you look at his games, they were, let's say, not only because sacrificing in King's Gambit that you would think that everybody would play. Morphy didn't play King's Gambit.
Yeah.
He was playing sound chess and very dynamic one. He didn't go a lot into structures and so on, which was later developed by Steinitz. He wasn't exactly, let's say, revolutionary in this way. But he was absolutely, he felt the rhythm of the game greatly, almost as he was a modern player. Previously, it happened often that players would know this stuff, but very often they would play too slow, or they would start maneuvering when you need an action and so on. Morphy was very, very dynamic. That's the word I would characterize him, dynamic.
He realized the F7 point was weak, and he would always go after it, and
for example,
Bishop C4.
Yeah. Now talking about his career, it's actually also very, very interesting story. First of all, he was, think about it, he was younger than Steinitz. That's the first one which is supposed to puzzle.
He's younger than Steinitz?
He is younger than Steinitz.
So when was Steinitz born?
Nobody realized it. Steinitz was born 1836.
Whoa, so they were actually of the same era.
Yes.
Wow, but everyone thinks Morphy to be before Steinitz.
Like 30 years,
yes.
Or something like that. That was completely shocking for everyone when I'm telling them. And even I spoke to some top players and told them, do you know? And I said, no, it cannot be. Because you see it as absolutely different era,
right.
Morphy was like pre-modern chess, and Steinitz was in 20th century, and he played. He was older. So Morphy started it all in the end of 1840s. He played at home. He came from a very wealthy family.
Okay.
From New Orleans, south of United States, and he was a prodigy. So when he was like 12 or something, he was already beating everyone in the city, in the state. And soon in 1850s, when he was a teenager, he became American champion.
So that time tournaments were being held regularly?
Not regularly, but they had the American Chess Congress or whatever, exactly starting at that time, around the 1850s. That was about first tournaments to start. The tournaments in general were not staged regularly for a simple reason, logistics. It was very difficult to communicate to all, to bring people from all over the world, or even from Europe, to arrive and to participate in some international chess tournament, because so much logistic would be involved, that's the reason why the first international tournament was held only in 1851.
Oh, 1851.
Yes,
where was that?
In London.
In London?
Yeah, during the Grand Fair.
Okay.
Great fair.
Did Morphy play in that?
No, he was too young then. He was too young. He was 14. Yeah, he didn't play. But that was the first big event, or first real event. The funny thing that this event was organized by Staunton. Staunton chess we know.
These pieces are known as Staunton pieces.
Not sure that these are, but
kind
okay,
of the
maybe
design.
kind.
The design of
Yes.
Yes.
He was absolutely top player of 1840s, and was considered the best in the world. But there was no proof to that. So he was very influential person by himself. He was more famous not about his chess, because now we know chess as Magnus Carlsen, world champion, Garry Kasparov, Bobby Fischer. By that time, chess was a sort of a board game for smart people. That's it.
Okay.
So it was not a profession. It was not occupation for someone. Staunton was mostly famous being a leading Shakespeare researcher. He was #1 Shakespeare, I don't know, researcher, how would you put it, by that time.
Okay.
In this position, he had been influential, and he pulled this first international chess tournament, which required quite serious funding, which came from royal court.
I'm very interested to know who played in it.
Well, 1851 is a. Of course, you need to go. Well, it's simpler to go to Google the
Yes,
lineup.
you can search it.
But the funny thing is that the Staunton himself actually lost very quickly in the round.
He didn't win.
No, he participated and he lost. There was a knockout system,
Oh.
and he lost, I think, already round 2.
So who won it?
A remarkable player won it, Adolf Andersen from Germany.
The one who has these evergreen games.
Yes, this Andersen Kiziritsky, and you know, we know this only due to that. But actually, Andersen was another unique story. I mean, it's all
this is perfect.
Yeah, correlated. So we can talk in length about that. But Andersen, what is special about him? He was a math teacher, just a teacher in math gymnasium in the city of Breslau. Now it's in Poland. By that time, it was Germany.
Okay.
Not the United, it was Prussia, probably. So he was a player who could afford to himself to play chess only occasionally because his profession was he was a math teacher. By the end of 1840s, he was even not the leading German player. The leading was named von der Laser, the German player, who now is only known or mostly known as an author of most impactful chess openings, chess theory book in the middle of 19th century. Von der Laser books were, let's say, the best chess opening books throughout till the end of 19th century, when then they came the books from Bilger, then another generation. But let's say for 50 years, the books from von der Laser were most famous. And Andersen was not a favorite to win. He was after all, only second player among Germans. But he won this tournament in 1851 and won it in a great style. This tournament was a knockout, and they played mini matches, like the World Cup, like in today's day. And Andersen won, but he didn't beat Staunton, I think. I think Staunton lost to somebody else. I can't be wrong here, so I can't remember exactly. But what I know for sure is that Andersen was seeking a match with Staunton to play afterwards immediately. But it didn't materialize because I think maybe Staunton's fault was more because maybe he was a bit unsure in his potential win, and that would ruin his reputation because he had a great reputation. Once again, one of the most brightest persons of the generation. Think about it: Shakespeare, chess, design of chess pieces, all that. Actually, 1851 is also famous for chess clock being first introduced there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was introduced there.
The analog clock.
Yeah, the old. I think in 1851.
Which many of our viewers might not have even seen,
right,
because now digital is so prevalent. But at that point in 1851, after this tournament, the scene would have been such that people would be unsure who's the strongest chess player, right?
Obviously, there were almost no tournaments. Mostly they played matches. The matches were because it was very easy to have two players to sit down and play a match.
Right.
To play a tournament, to have people traveling, the travel was a curse by that time, and it was very difficult to assemble even 6 or 8 players, and to assemble 16 players. That would be, and that's why no big tournament was held for quite many years.
Would you say 1896 was the first big one? There was this, or before that?
No. Before that there were okay. The Hastings 1895.
Yes, 1895.
Yes, was a huge one, but before that they had many big ones. 1870 in Baden-Baden, 1860 something in Paris was a big one. Was a great fair. This time not in London but in Paris. But back to Morphy.
Yes.
So he comes to Europe because he becomes American champion by 1855. Once again, I'm not a historian, maybe 54, maybe 55, but that's more or less. And he sails to Europe.
Because that's where all the top players are.
Yeah. He goes there to play chess. He is young, he can afford to himself, He is genius, and he wants to play Staunton.
Okay.
He once again he didn't want to play Anderson, he came to play Staunton because Staunton was a famous person, you know.
Right.
He was an influencer, if you wish. But Staunton declines.
Oh, really?
Yes, Staunton declines, he finds reasoning. Morphy comes to London, to Paris, he doesn't work. And then Morphy starts playing those who are within the reach. European players are stronger than American players. And first he plays a German master who by that time moved to, I think he first moved to England and then moved to Paris, Daniel Harwitz.
Yes, I've heard of
You probably heard his name
Yes.
because due to his puzzles, endgame compositions,
Right.
to bishops against knight or something analysis, this comes from him. Daniel Harwitz was a brilliant player by his own right.
Okay.
At that time, he was top 5 player in the world. And the funny thing is that this is the first match of Morphy in Europe, and it was among all his matches he played, real matches, not 2 games, but it was the one he had the worst score at. He lost first 2 games.
Wow.
So imagine young Morphy, genius, who comes to Europe to conquer the world, and he loses to Harwitz. Harwitz was much older. He would be now about 200 years old. I think he was born 1823 or something like that. To remind you, Morphy was born in 1837.
Right.
And Harwitz wins a brilliant first game. Just have a look at this game. I mean, it's a game which I think even today's grandmaster would not be ashamed of.
Wow.
With an endgame technique of a highest degree.
And this was the time when games used to be adjourned and it would go on for days.
They
right?
would go on long days, but I don't know what time controls they played. Because contrary to the belief, it's not always that they played long time controls. The longer time controls came in force when already the system was fixed and so on. By that time, many of these matches, and I will talk about it later, some of them they agreed to play two games a day. As Carlson wants, more or less. But Harwitz wins 2 games, but Morphy comes back in the 3rd game with a win, and Harwitz doesn't play a good game. And then Morphy wins a string of games, and the match is over 5.5 to 2.5.
Wow.
Morphy wins this match, and he starts playing other European masters, beating them rather convincingly. What's more, with some of them, he even gives a pawn odds.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
That was. Yes. And he still is looking for Staunton. Staunton doesn't come. Then he says, okay, what to do? I mean, he as long as he's in Europe, he has to do something with his chess career, and he tries to get Adolf Anderssen to play a match.
Which is logical because he had won the 1851 tournament.
Yes. And Adolf Anderssen, the problem is that he's, first of all, correspondence. He's in Germany. He's in Breslau. It's quite a distance by that time. I don't think the trains were intercontinental by that time. There were trains already, but all the mail and all the agreements. At the end of the day, they agreed to play a match.
Okay.
They agreed to play a match in Paris. I think it's 1858. Yes. At the end of 1858, Anderssen comes to Paris.
Did it happen in that famous Café de la Régence?
No, they played in, if I remember well, they played in some hotel.
Okay.
Café de la Régence was a fun place, great place, but not to play like match between 2 top players.
It was just for like
Café
people who would come
smoke and play
right.
and so on. So it was different, and Anderssen comes to play this match, and Morphy, I think maybe he came from London to Paris, or maybe he was already by that time in Paris, and they agreed to play a match, the match which strikingly similar to today's format. It was the best of 13.
Wow.
It was the best of 13, and it was played with a very strange schedule. They played it within 8 or 9 days.
Oh, so
Yes.
quickly.
On some because Anderssen couldn't afford himself to do it in work time. Well, by that time the work ethic was different from today.
But there must be a prize fund raised or not really?
That's an interesting point. I'll touch upon that. But just about Anderson, he agreed to come only on Christmas holiday. So
because he couldn't leave his work.
Yes, yes. So they played at the last 10 days of December, or something like that. Only Christmas holiday allowed him to come and play, and he came. And from what I derive from all the stories about Anderson, that he was absolutely impeccably great person. I heard a lot of story about, and we would know Morphy went mad. Steinitz had a horrible character and was very difficult to deal with and had a lot of rivalries. From what I hear from Anderson, he was just a very, very reputable person and very correct and very gentleman. Although he didn't come from aristocracy or something, but he just was high style. So Anderson comes. That's also, there is a story about that he comes from the railway station and learns that Morphy has mild flu. And he comes, the first person to visit, he comes to his room to offer him to postpone the game for one day more.
That's very kind.
Yes, yes. And but Morphy knows that they have only so many days. He says, no, I can play. Like Fischer with Chocolate, but and they play the next day, and Anderson wins first game once again.
Okay.
Anderson wins, but Morphy is a stronger player. But it has to be said that Anderson was absolutely rusty by that time. From some games, you see how great this player was. I would suggest to those who really are keen to listen and to learn something and not just to enjoy this nice conversation, look at the game. I don't remember I think it would be game number 6 from the match. Anderson played white, played first move a3.
A3, yes.
A3, yes. And it was absolutely fantastic game played by Anderson.
Maybe he wanted to play as black, right?
Yes, he played
something like that.
He played eventually he played Paulson as Paulson as it would be now, because Paulson was leaving by that time. The opening was something I'm not sure exactly the moves, right? So it was like that. I mean, very modern. And then he played d4 and so on. Look at this game. It's absolutely great game. Anderson was creating a masterpiece, but Morphy defended well. And although Anderson had an advantage, around move 40 he blundered something, and he lost from the very big advantage, maybe winning. I didn't check it with an engine, and he lost the match eventually. Morphy was stronger, but I have to say that Anderson was a player of a massive caliber. So he was deservedly considered the best player in the world in the 1850s, before Morphy, and funnily enough after Morphy departures. Because what happens next? Morphy beats Anderson.
So the Morphy has won. Now he's
Morphy
beaten
won, yeah.
everyone except Staunton.
Right.
So he's like the strongest.
Yeah, he didn't beat Steinitz because Steinitz didn't appear yet.
Okay.
He's older 1 year old, but nobody knows him yet. Okay, he's a local player in Vienna.
Yes.
And nobody knows him yet. He just I think I'll touch upon it a bit later. But Morphy conducts series of blindfold games. Because he doesn't have already worthy opponents, he at least does something exceptional. People are applauding. All newspapers describe how young American genius shows his... because playing blindfold always was impressive for people, and Morphy did it brilliantly. And that's it for his European voyage. And in 1859 he departs back to US. Okay. So he spent 2 years in Europe. In 1859 he gets back to US.
He's so young, right? He's just 22.
He's just 22. And he pursues a career as a lawyer. He's from a wealthy family. He becomes a lawyer. He lives in New Orleans. Unfortunately, with the time, it becomes more and more evident that he has some mental disorders. Okay. He was not outright crazy or something like people would. At the beginning, these were just oddities, but with the time it progressed. Of course, the medicine by that time was not very well. But talking about Morphy's, let's say, following chess life, it was almost non-existent. He played something in US afterwards, very, very informal games. And in 1881 or so, I'm not sure exactly the year, he met Steinitz for the first time, when Steinitz came to US to play a tournament.
He's 40 now, 44.
Yeah. And he came to a tournament in New York as a visitor. And Steinitz tried to convince him to play some chess, but already Morphy didn't want to play. He also was a bit, as I said, a bit oddities became more and more evident, and he gets back to New Orleans, and he dies in 1884.
So basically Morphy's career was just 2 years?
International career only 2 years. That's what people also don't realize.
I thought he must have played for at least 10 years.
No, 2 years only of an international. You can consider some international American tournaments, maybe altogether 5 years. You can call it from 54 to 59 or something like that. After that, he basically stopped playing, and it's a great pity. It would be very interesting to see how his game could have evolved, because he was one of the great geniuses. And if you know, when Fischer was asked about top 10 players of all times, he named Morphy as one of the top 10.
Yes.
It was in 1970 probably when Fischer said that. So I would not have Morphy in my top 10 for this time already, because since then we saw Fischer himself, we saw Kasparov, Karpov, and Carlsen, each of whom I would put higher, because it's also the position. It's also important what was the level of opposition, and for Morphy it was not as high, right? But if he had continued, and if he had really played the match with maybe even with Steinitz a few years after that, we would see how his playing his career would evolve.
But what I liked is Morphy took things in his hands and traveled to Europe. He could have just said, okay, I'm good, and stayed in US himself. But he wanted to prove. I think that's quite entrepreneurial.
I think this entrepreneurial spirit is very much American one, I would say. Because it also has to do with something that would be done by Pillsbury in 50 years' time, who was not a known player, internationally recognized when he won Hastings 1895. We're jumping very much ahead.
That is an unbelievable story which I would love to know later, because I think the last round and that excitement.
All the tournament was exciting, but just to understand, Pillsbury was not a favorite at all.
Right.
He was even not #1 American player. I think US champion by that time was Showalter. At least they were on par with, and nobody thought that he could challenge Lasker and Steinitz and Chigorin, and Tarash, who were 4 grands of world chess. And Pillsbury, actually, it has to be said while I'm here, and I don't know if we will have time to go after all that. Pillsbury was probably the first chess professional in the way he approached the game, the preparation. For example, for Hastings, because he came from US and to be accustomed to the jet lag and so he arrived like 2 weeks before the tournament.
Oh.
Yes. He rented a place. Yes. He rented a place. He did his jogging, and he described it in his diary how he prepares for the tournament.
Wow.
He prepared for each particular opponent the opening ideas. So it was an approach strangely already pioneered by Pillsbury in 1895.
About Morphy, there is this very famous game, Night at the Opera, Morphy versus Duke of Brunswick.
Yes.
When did that happen? And because every young kid still is taught that game.
So the game is very famous. It probably still remains the most famous game of chess being played. I wanted to finish on that, but you actually good you put it. It's very nice story. It was played in Paris Opera in I think 1857. They have been actually usually it is quoted that it was played during the Nozze del Figaro, but it was played during different opera. I think it was Norma, but I'm not sure. I'm afraid to go wrong with which opera it was. It is possible to. It's already have been documented. Of course, it was very light game, and it was played in a pause between Act 1 and Act 2.
So there was an act at the
Yes.
opera, and in between they played this game.
Yes.
Ooh.
Well, it doesn't take too long, to play the c4, e5, knight f3, d6. I mean, they were reasonable players. At least they didn't blunder pieces. d4, bishop g4, right? So that's at least that shows that they understand something about chess. Queen f3, d, bishop c4, knight f6. I think that was something like that. Queen b3.
Yes.
And then,
Queen
I mean, if
b7,
you think about it, for a count and duke, they play reasonable chess. They saw that everything's hanging. They play queen e7. They want to trade the queen. I mean,
If queen b7,
yeah,
queen b4.
Yeah, I mean, we think of them as being, only the victims of Morphy. But if you think about it, I mean, it was reasonably played by Black.
It's like we have a tournament, and the most important person from that city comes to make the opening move, and many times they don't know how pieces move as well.
Exactly.
So here he knew.
So they
Yes.
more than you. I mean, queen e7 is actually a very nice move, and so it was like what, knight c3, probably c6, bishop g5, and b5, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take a lot. Also, Morphy doesn't. I think he could have played this game blindfold as well. Bishop b5, knight d7, long castle, rook d8, knight takes d7, right?
Yes.
Rook d1,
Queen e6.
queen e6. Once again, I mean, they understand something about this game. I mean, they play very reasonable moves. I mean, it's and so the most remarkable finish. I'm not sure if they took on b8 or if they. I don't know how the game broke out to the media, because somebody had to record it. It's obviously not Morphy coming to Le Figaro next day and saying, "Guys, I played such a beautiful game." He didn't have stream or something. Now you would have it like American beats.
Morphy was proud of it, right? Like, because if you see, there are only two pieces left, and both are doing important job.
Yeah, no, it's very minimalistic and very cute, obviously. Yeah, but funny thing that Morphy is many people don't know much about him. They know only about this game, but his influence was big in terms of it impacted Steinitz actually. What happened is very curious, because, as I told you, Steinitz was not an international known player by the time Morphy left Europe, but he was a very ambitious guy. Steinitz comes from a Jewish family, not a wealthy family at all. He was born in Prague, and he was one of 12 kids in the family.
Oh.
Yeah, a huge family, maybe 12, maybe yeah. His father was Talmud researcher, Torah researcher. So he was destined to live into how European Jews were into books and into religion. But he was lucky enough that by time of his youth in Vienna, in Austria, it was Austro-Hungarian Empire, they softened anti-Jew regulations. For many years, since Middle Ages, Jews were not allowed to live in central cities, like in Vienna, for example. They were not allowed to study in universities, and so exactly by that time, when Steinitz grows up, so it's about 1850s, there is a big reform, and he moves to Vienna. He graduates, but he's not very successful as a student, and he decides to dedicate himself to chess. He first sees it as just a very good income. He plays in a cafe, as you have Café de la Régence in Paris. They have cafes in Vienna to play chess, and he becomes just a coffee house player. In every sense, he was not a Steinitz we would know 20 years afterwards.
Who said that weaknesses, weak squares, outposts, all of that he did?
Nothing. Well, he was all out, King's Gambit, and no clue about positional chess. But then he sees what Morphy does. Morphy does the same, but on a sound positional ground. So he's not just all out, sacrifice and try to give mate, but basing it on, and Steinitz realizes that he has to actually reflect on that and to improve. And it's amazing story, because Steinitz is playing and playing. He plays his first tournament in Wien, first international tournament. It would be around 1860. And he finished like fifth in not a very strong field. And he understands that he needs to get better. What happens next? He realizes that in Wien he has very few opponents of his strength. And what's a curious point is, for his financial situation, he doesn't have enough opponents who would pay and play high stakes with him. So what does he do in this situation?
He goes to Paris.
Yes, to London.
To London.
Yes, he goes to London. The stakes in London like 5 times higher than in Wien. All the money of the world by that time is in British Empire. And they play the chess club on Strand. If you know the Strand, the chess club there. The gentlemen here like to play game of chess. They're playing on high stakes, and chess being seen as something like as an epitome of humans, ability to play games at least. And Steinitz decides to stay there.
Okay.
He moves to London. He starts playing, and then he gets a regular job as a first chess column in a big newspaper.
Oh wow.
Yeah, maybe not the first, but first regular big chess column. Okay, I must go. The newspaper called FIDE, if I remember. And he becomes basically a regular contributor. By that time, those who wrote for major newspapers were paid well, and in addition to his chess earnings, he was making decent money. And what happens there, it's absolutely unique. Okay, we will continue with Steinitz and then finish, because that's a connection between pre-modern and modern chess. He stops playing chess. You wouldn't know that maybe, but he didn't play chess.
He didn't play any
shifted
tournament. To London,
yeah,
but then didn't play chess.
He didn't play competitive chess for 7 years.
So he was just writing the column.
And working on his chess theory.
Really?
That's where transformation comes from. Steinitz, a romantic King's Gambit, sorry, King's Indian didn't exist, King's Gambit and all-out chess, to a role of structure, role of the king, weak squares, development, and so on. It's
like someone goes into these forests and then comes back enlightened. Something like that.
Exactly. So it's unique. For 7 years he didn't play a single tournament or a single match against a top player. After that he comes back in fourth, and his first tournament he beats one of the strongest players at his time. I don't remember who was it Bardeleben or 7-0.
Wow.
Yes, it was such a dramatic shift, because actually the funny story about Steinitz that he was not very successful in tournaments. He didn't win any single big tournament. He would share sometimes, but I think first place once he shared maybe. But he was absolutely monstrous in matches. He won all the matches he played.
You mean this was even after he had evolved his play? Still
yes,
he wouldn't
yes,
win
he wouldn't win, yeah. Let's say 1870, big tournament, he didn't win and so on. But in matches he knew how to approach it. He knew. Also, you should understand what by that time was a tournament. Tournament was when you had 3, 4, 5 good players, and the rest of the field was very, very weak. And the scores were normal, so everything was decided in 1-2 games. When you played a match, and he always says that strongest player should be contested in the match. And to maybe finalize the story on how it evolved, and Paul Morphy's role again. Why, being the strongest player already by 1870s, why Steinitz didn't become world champion until 1886?
Yeah, that's also interesting. Who decided that 1886 was the world championship match?
Exactly. And that's a very interesting point.
Because there was no FIDE. FIDE came into existence in 1924.
Yes. And only since 1948 FIDE organized the world championship. The top matches. But it's an amazing story. So, according to most popular version today, which I heard from several historians, and I think it reflects what it is, before Morphy has died, it was decided, it was understood that he cannot conduct world championship match, because somebody to call himself world champion without beating Morphy, it would be incomprehensible.
But Morphy was not playing.
Morphy was not playing, but he was alive, and his fame was enormous. For example, when Steinitz beat Anderson, Steinitz played also with Anderson. It's also a very remarkable feat too. I think, I hate to go wrong here, but I think it was 1868, around that time, maybe 1870. Steinitz played the same Adolf Anderson who won 1851, who played with Morty 1858, and he played with the match with Steinitz. Yes. And that was absolute, it was a box, it was not a chess. It was 8-6 without draws.
Wow. Like the Ding Nepo match, recent one.
Well, and Steinitz won. And since then he was considered the strongest player. Anderson was already quite aging. He was well above 40. I think even Anderson was born around 1818 or something. I think 1818.
So he was above 50.
He was about 50. And by that time, that was normal. Now, for those who listen to us and know that all these young guys, Prague, Bukesh, you think that they invented the world at 17. People just started to grow it because, we don't realize that there are people of two different characters. Some like Morphy, who shoots at a very young age, and there are people who continue developing at a certain age. From the example of Korchnoi, for example, right? He played his world championship match at 47, and his best feat was maybe the match which he probably his best feat was the match which he lost. At 47, to fight with young Karpov, to fight on par, 32 games and almost to win. That is amazing. And Korchnoi continued till 70. He was absolutely top player, right? At 70, he was this tournament in Biel, ahead of Gelfand and Grishchuk and who else? Svidla. So the same for Steinitz. To remind you once again, he was born 1836, and he became a dominating power in chess at the end of 70s and 80s.
That's 45 years old.
And only in 1886 they played an official world championship match.
When did Morphy pass away?
1884.
So maybe that's why you are saying that. Although Steinitz beat Anderson and everyone said you are strongest, everyone said, but Morphy is there in the US, so you are not.
I think not that he was told. I think maybe he felt himself. Steinitz was a very unique character. He was very fighting. He fought with everyone. They almost had a rumble with who was it? Some Blackburn, yes, the leading English player. It was also because all sort of. He was very special in many ways, and he also felt that people do not understand him, do not respect him enough, and he had to prove, because he was coming from nowhere, and by that time also for a Jewish guy just to come among English gentlemen, and he is just a simple guy, and he was also very short. People do not know that, but he was 158 only.
Really?
Yes.
But you generally see his pictures where he has this big beard and a hat, and
his beard was almost as long as yes, his posture. So he was very short, and he was very. I think he had a lot of complexes, what we could call it. But he was very fighting. He was ready to prove his own. When he was playing, I mean, even his theory, even he knew this move would not be the best in the position. If it reflected his principles, he would follow the principle and play. And he was a great champion. He never was afraid to accept a challenge. He played matches, he played tournaments, although he knew that he's not very good in tournaments. But he kept on playing, trying to prove his point always. And he went down only to Jan Glasker in 1894. Actually, by that time there was no clear set of rules when you have to play a match, what should be financial reward and so on. So he could have continued to be a world champion, and everybody would understand, because Lasker still didn't have this large array of tournaments won. By 1894, he won just a couple of tournaments. I think one in Manchester, one maybe in Germany, and that's it.
But Steinitz lost, so he said, okay, I lost my title.
Yes. And he accepted his challenge, and it was 1894, so he was not a young man anymore. He was, what, 58? And he, just for your understanding, Lasker was absolutely great player, but by 1894, I wouldn't say that he was much stronger. The match was very equal. First, like...
Where did this match happen?
1894, but where did they play this?
Because Lasker was from Germany, right?
Yes. But did they play in a good question? I should have known it, but I don't remember. Then they played the second match, the rematch, and that was played in St. Petersburg, 95-96, I think. But
the first match, which happened in 1886, was between Zukertort and Steinitz.
Yes.
But how did Zukertort come into the picture?
Zukertort was a very strong tournament player. He had much more tournaments wins than actually Steinitz had.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I think he won his first major tournament in 1870.
And he was from?
Zukertort was Austro-Hungarian Empire as well. I don't know exactly from which city. And he was considered one of the very top players. In 1881 he won 81, 83 maybe, he won two of the most important tournaments of the time. And by that time, as a tournament player, he was stronger than Steinitz.
So very interesting that Morphy is no more. Zukertort is the strongest tournament player, and Steinitz is of course very strong. So I think this was a very official kind of a world championship.
Everybody understood that these are two strongest players alive. Maybe that also contributed. Right. Because Steinitz, once again, he'd never lost a single match. He played like 10 matches before, and he didn't lose a single match. And Zukertort won two of the most prestigious tournaments with Steinitz participating also. And that was sort of contest when everybody understood. And before we finish here, I would also point out that one name should not be forgotten is Louis Paulsen.
Yes.
He was a contemporary of Steinitz and Morphy. He became a strong player before Steinitz. I think he was born 1834, but I don't remember exactly. He was a couple of years, I think, older than Steinitz. And he was the one which, along with Steinitz, pioneered all this positional chess. It is often forgotten, and I don't want it to be forgotten, because Paulsen, after all, he didn't become famous player, right? I mean,
but he has an opening named after him.
Yes, the Lion, but nobody even knows what's his name, what's his contributions. There's some in history of chess, some lines are very Trompovsky.
Yes.
What's Trompovsky's role in history of chess? Sorry, but guys, I mean, I'm sorry. It doesn't exist almost, right?
So you mean to say that Paulsen's contribution to chess development was huge?
Enormous. I would say, in a way, not less than Morphy's. Morphy's was absolutely highest degree of the pre-modern chess. Paulsen, along with Steinitz, were the pioneers of a new school. That what brought the different perception of the game. But once again, it's difficult to judge, because if you're a great player with a fantastic feel for dynamic and so on, it can replace other things.
Right.
I would think that if Morphy would continue to play into 60s, he would also be switching, genuinely switching to more positional. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't have any incentive even to switch, because it was enough for him to play in this style to win. It seems that he was really bright person, and he obviously, it's not my idea, it's also Steinitz quote, he impacted Steinitz in a way that he gave him, let's say, inspiration to grow. He showed him that how chess player, also the fame. I think for Steinitz it was very important to be recognized. When you come from a small place, it's always important for you to have this. And he could learn how popular Morphy became. He was a first chess legend. It has to be said. Staunton, which was Howard Staunton, he was a very famous person, but not for his chess, rather for his Shakespearean works and so on.
Also, he was not as bold as Morphy. He did not play Morphy,
and this fame that it also impacted, and then chess gets more into wider, let's say, world, because people start getting interested. Chess columns appear, and the next stage already when you have Lasker. Lasker is already a story by his own, because the perception that chess is a game of smart people is largely should be attributed to Lasker, who was one of the smartest people possibly ever lived in the earth.
He was like the psychologist, right? On the
everything. Just a short thing, maybe it would be if we ever to continue this.
No,
series.
we have to. My one question before we go to Lasker is: so the match between Morphy and Steinitz not happening. It's like something like Karpov-Fischer match not happening ever, like something like this, yes?
Very good comparison, yes.
So everyone would have wanted to know who would win.
Very good comparison also because Fischer in a way was older chess and Karpov signified a new era of chess. And once again, when we spoke about Fischer chess, and many say that he didn't play quite a modern chess, but it's probably because he was not demanded to. And once again, if he had to compete with Karpov, I think he would adjust. That's correct for everyone from this title.
Sure.
And I always quote the example of Korchnoi and Smyslov. I mean, when we compare players of past and nowadays players, many say, okay, if you compare purely computer-wise, they would have less first-line moves and more blunders. But that's because that was the calling by that time. If they had to adjust, they would adjust the top players, absolutely top players. And we would see Korchnoi, once again, I mean, at the age of 70 or at the age of 80, or Smyslov, once again. So there is little doubt that young Spassky, for example, could adjust himself to newer level if he had this urge or incentive. So the same happened with Morphy and Steinitz. Morphy was a legend. He also made for a long time impact on American chess, and that brought, in a way, Pillsbury. That brought the popularity of chess throughout the United States, because chess was very popular by that time in the United States. New York chess tournaments in 1924-27 also that came as a continuation, because it all, these processes are always interrelated. Like we say today, Soviet chess school, Soviet Union doesn't exist for 33 years already. But this all drags one after another. So it's history, and I'm happy if those who listen to us today would learn more already, not from my speech, which is not very planned, it's very condensed, obviously, but of course you can open stories and to learn about it.
This ignites the curiosity. Like right now, my biggest curiosity is to go back and check Anderson and Steinitz match. What happened there? How did they fight? So this is
and
just
check
amazing.
Anderson Morphy. Game number, I think 6, A3. Absolutely tremendous play by Anderson. I'm still feeling pity for him losing this particular one.
Well, Emil, we have to continue this, going to Lasker and so on and moving forward. But I would also love if the viewers let us know what their thoughts are. But thank you so much for sharing this knowledge. I think it really clarifies so many things that I was not aware of.
Thank you, Sagar, for initiating it. Yeah, I would love to also to hear from those who will watch it. Not only, Emil knows his history. Yeah, I know that I know my history. But if it really is of interest for you and really makes you to learn more, to read more about it, because I think that's something that's very special about chess, and that's a heritage we should preserve.
Thank you.